one of the things they talked about was, there were no planes on 9/11. There was no airplane at Shanksville.
This is really
there was no airplane
at
Pentagon. There was no airplane at the World Trade Center.
Right. So can you take us through that? Take us through why you think that's true and how you got. I mean, you're a pilot. You certainly have, a vote in whether those planes had the capacity to hit those buildings. Because our Henry Deacon has told us some very interesting things also about those planes. Actually, he thinks they were remote controlled. I don't know if that's true, but basically that planes don't have the ability to actually steer into buildings at that level. I mean, I'm not a pilot, so I don't understand the logistics. But how did you come around to this?
Okay, first of all, we're going to talk about Flight 11 and 77 didn't exist in the beginning. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics has no record of them taking off, has no, so let's forget about them because they did not exist. So now we're just talking about 175 and Flight 93. Flight 93 allegedly crashed at Shanksville. Anybody who has any background in accident investigation or any background at all can't possibly believe an airplane crashed. There was no wreckage. It just simply could not happen.
John Lear is a world record holder for type certifications. A type certification is what the FAA would issue to a pilot in order for him to be qualified to legally operate an aircraft. His knowledge and experience for aircraft design limitations is unrivaled. Let's listen to Russ Wittenberg, retired U.S. Air Force captain, former fighter pilot with over 100 combat missions, and a retired commercial airline pilot who flew for Pan Am Airlines and United for 35 years. According to Captain Wittenberg, quote, "The government story they handed us about 9/11 is total BS, plain and simple." Well, let's hear from Captain Wittenberg.
I flew the two actual aircraft which were involved in 9/11, the flight number 175 and flight 93, the 757 that allegedly went down at Shanksville, and flight 175 is the aircraft that's alleged to have hit the South Tower. I don't believe it's possible for, like I said, for a terrorist, a so-called terrorist, to train on a 172, then jump in the cockpit of a 757, 767 class cockpit, and vertical navigate the aircraft, lateral navigate the aircraft, and fly the airplane at speeds exceeding its design limit speed by well over 100 knots, make high-speed, high-bank turns, pulling probably 5, 6, 7 Gs, and the aircraft would literally fall out of the sky. I couldn't do it, and I'm absolutely positive they couldn't do it.
Former U.S. Air Force pilot Lieutenant Jeff Dahlstrom wrote in a 2007 statement, "It was all premeditated. Treason, a false flag military operation, and betrayal of the trust of the American people were committed on 9/11 by the highest levels of the U.S. government, and not one person responsible for the crimes or the cover-up has been held accountable for the last 6 years." After reading 15 well-researched books, studying 8 or 9 DVD documentaries, and devoting months of personal research and investigation, I have arrived at one ultimate conclusion. The American government and the U.S. Constitution have been hijacked and subverted by a group of criminals that today are the real terrorists. They are in control of the U.S. government, and they have violated their oaths of office and committed treason against their own citizens. Major John Fox, a former U.S. Marine Corps fighter pilot and retired commercial airline pilot for Continental Airlines with a 35-year commercial aviation career, in a 2007 support of the Architects and Engineers petition to reinvestigate 9/11, he wrote, "On hearing the military NORAD and NEAD excuses for no intercepts on 9/11, I knew from personal experience that they were lying. I then began rechecking other evidence and found mostly more lies from the official spokesman. Jet fuel fires at atmospheric pressure do not get hot enough to weaken steel. Structures do not collapse through themselves in free fall time with only gravity as the powering force." Lieutenant Colonel Shelton Langford, U.S. Marine Corps retired, an attack pilot with 300 combat missions and a 20-year career. His decorations include the Distinguished Flying Cross and 32 awards of the Air Medal. Our government has been hijacked by means of a new Pearl Harbor. He also stated, Until we demand an independent, honest, and thorough investigation and accountability for those whose action and inaction led to those events and the cover-up, our republic and our Constitution remain in the gravest danger. Another harsh critic of official accounts, Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Lattis, U.S. Air Force retired, currently commercial airline pilot. Colonel Lattis' career includes a Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism, 4 air medals, 4 meritorious service medals, and 9 aerial achievement medals. His combat experience includes Desert Storm and 4 tours of duty in Northern and Southern Watch. He also served as Pentagon Weapons Requirement Officer and as a member of the Pentagon's Quadrennial Defense Review, and as president of the U.S. Air Force Accident Investigation Board. Commander Ted Muga, U.S. Navy after retirement, had a second career as a commercial airline pilot for Pan Am, stated, "The maneuver at the Pentagon was just a tight spiral coming down out of 7,000 feet. And a commercial aircraft, while they can, in fact, structurally somewhat handle that maneuver, they are very, very difficult, and it would take considerable training. Commercial airliners are very complex pieces of machines. They are designed for 2 pilots, 2 experienced pilots, and to think you're going to get an amateur up into the cockpit and fly, much less navigate, to a designated target, the probability is so low that it's bordering on impossible. Now consider and add to the fact that these pilots did this at well over 100 knots above their design limitations." Commander Ralph Kolstad, U.S. Navy aviator, retired, and also having a 20-year military and a commercial airline pilot, 27 years, flying American Airlines, has flown the 727, 757, 767, MD-80, and Fokker F-100 airliners. He has flown a total of over 23,000 hours in his career. Of the Pentagon, he says, "At the Pentagon, the pilot of the Boeing 757 did quite a feat of flying. I have 6,000 hours of time in Boeing 757 and 767s and could have not flown it the way the flight path was described." You can read those statements in their entirety, as well as many others, at Pilots for Truth or Patriots Question 9/11. At the 2009 Edwards Air Force Base Open House and Air Show, I interviewed several pilots and several flight engineers. I could not find one dissenting view from what you just heard from John Lair and Russ Wittenberg and these other pilots and aviation experts regarding VMO below 10,000 feet. One major, pilot of a KC-135, was quite blunt. He said, "Past 350 knots, the aircraft is very vulnerable to structural failure," and as for 500 knots, he laughed and said, "No way, the wings would fall off."